When we went and had these press last week, 3 more people were murdered this year. And one each time. So we want to represent, people ask you why there's 3 blanks, that's why. We can't leave anybody forgotten. Okay? We're going to have a minute or so, we're going to get started. Psych. David?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Welsh, the Events Committee Chairperson for the South Coast LGBTQ+ Network. Today, November 20th, is Transgender Day of Remembrance. Transgender Day of Remembrance is an opportunity for communities to come together and remember transgender and gender non-conforming people who have been murdered, often very brutally, for the challenging ideas about what it means to be male or female or something else. There's an opportunity not only to pause to remember those we have lost, but to help raise awareness about the persistent stigma and discrimination, and to help to do something about it.
Was the highest known number of fatal deaths of transgender and non-conforming people, with a reported 44 people violently killed in the United States. Now, today, 2021, has become the deadliest year
on record, with 46 murders. Behind us, you'll see 46 placards of the folks that were murdered this year. There are 3 blank. By the time we printed these last week, 3 more people were murdered in the United States, but we need to represent everybody, and that's what we did today. Our network is hosting this in honor to memory of those lives that have been lost in acts of anti-transgender violence, a day to memorize those who have been murdered because of transphobia. Everyone, please welcome our host for today, Alex West, Supervising Attorney at South Coast Fair.
just in case.
Thanks, Tracy. Good afternoon, everyone. As Tracy said, I'm Alex West, South Coast LGBTQ+ Network Board Member. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns. I want to thank you all for being here today. As Tracy said, today, November 20th, is Transgender Day of Remembrance. So Trans Day of Remembrance is an opportunity for our communities to come together and remember the now actually 47 transgender and gender nonconforming people who have been murdered this year. But it's also more than that. It's a chance to commit to ourselves and to one another our willingness to challenge transphobia when we see it, to speak out against intolerance, to dedicate ourselves to growing in our understanding of what it means to fight for the liberation of all of us. Please understand that this day is both a day of somber remembrance of those we have lost, and also an ask that we all honor the ability we have to imagine and build better worlds. So today, you'll hear about some of the work being done in our community in New Bedford to challenge the inevitability of harm due to one's gender identity. There's lots of great folks and organizations working together to ensure that New Bedford and our neighboring communities are not only a safe but more importantly, welcoming place for trans and non-binary folks. So in addition to the network, you'll hear from advocates who work to ensure that everyone has a right to housing, to work, to education, to healthcare, whether they are trans, genderqueer, gender nonconforming, or other identities, maybe even something we haven't dreamed up yet. I'm also glad that there are several local elected officials here today. You know, I was just thinking 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed that that was possible. So thank you for being here, and also know that your work does not stop today, right? So we come together on this day to honor those we have lost to transphobic violence. This is the reality of where we are. This is also all too often the only narrative we hear. So many trans people face other harms too that don't make the news, right? We know that Black and Latinx transgender women in particular face astounding rates of violence, both state-sponsored and caused by individuals. I don't have to name the recent trial we just saw where a white person was not held accountable for killing folks, right? And we know that the justice system often does not show up for those who are most in need of it. Those lacking legal immigration status and those with disabilities also face disproportionate harm. Too many trans folks are turned down for jobs, denied housing, have to make call after call to find a competent doctor who will treat us. We have lost so many trans siblings this year to other forms of violence. I know of some we've lost to COVID, but also due to a lack of health care, a lack of safe and affordable housing, our lives made shorter by 100 tiny instances of transphobia day in and day out. But we are also thriving. We are teachers, we are nurses, we are barbers, we are musicians, city council members, we are lawyers, we are activists, we are parents, and we are friends. Our lives are often imperfect, sometimes messy, sometimes hard, sometimes beautiful, but all too often not long enough. So I want us to remember why we are here today. We are more than this violence, but yet we are all impacted by it. So thank you. Starting us off with opening remarks for the day, please welcome Donnie Anderson, the Interim Minister of Pilgrim United Church of Christ here in New Bedford.
Thank you. And let me just say, thank you for being here as members of our community and as allies, for sitting on that cold stone. And I'm thinking about that, about talking. You know, preachers can talk long, but I'm not going to today. But thank you so much for your willingness to do this, because this is a day in our community when we think about the fact that simply living our lives can cost us our life, right here in the United States of America. And I'm so honored to be asked to just bring brief greetings today as a transgender woman, as a transgender minister. I don't have to tell you that the Christian church has not and often continues to not be terribly friendly towards our community. And I want to honor a New Bedford church, the Pilgrim United Church of Christ, right here in New Bedford, that had the courage to call a transgender minister. That was not an easy call, but they did it. And there's several of those folks here, and I'm so grateful for their support. I had a few friends from the community and their family members over for dinner last night, and it was just a wonderful evening. And this morning, as I sat in my bedroom and was folding laundry in the coziness of my bedroom and in the safety of my bedroom, I was reflecting on these people who have lost their lives this year. And it's great for us to come and remember them, and it's important for us to remember them. But I hope that all of us will also think today about ways that we will honor them. And I'll share quickly with you the two ways I want to honor them this year. The first is to recommit myself to the work of the world becoming more friendly towards our community. Maybe that means testifying at legislative hearings. Maybe that means standing up in protest. There's a whole lot of things that we can do, but if we don't do it, it will not be done because one of the things that I have found is as we have gained more acceptance, the organizational resistance to our acceptance has also gained momentum. And there's a battle to be fought. And then the second thing is, I just want to share with you in terms of, for me, to recommit myself to doing this work in an attitude of love. A picture of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. hangs in my kitchen every day so that I can be reminded that the way to do social justice work is through love. And when I see this, I'll be honest with you, it's hard for me to respond in love, to think that people who are just like me lost their lives because they're just like me. But I know that hate begets hate, and the only way we can stop that hate and that prejudice is love. And so for me today, I want to recommit myself not only to the work, but to the love. And thank you, New Bedford, for the love that you are showing to us today in coming out here. And thank you to all of you for what you are doing here by your presence. It means more to us than you will ever know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donnie. Up next, we have Kayla Faria, my esteemed coworker, staff attorney at South Coast Fair Housing. Thanks, Kayla.
I just want to thank my colleague Alex West and of course the South Coast LGBTQ+ network for organizing this very important vigil in remembrance, and of course providing this opportunity for me to speak with you all today. My name is Kayla Faria. I'm a staff attorney at South Coast Fair Housing. South Coast Fair Housing is a nonprofit housing organization that's specifically for fair housing. So we work on eliminating housing discrimination, ensuring equal housing opportunities, and developing more inclusive communities. To advance this mission, our organization delivers fair housing education, increases awareness of fair housing rights through community outreach, advocates for laws, policies, and programs that increase protections for equal access to housing, and combats discrimination through investigation, legal representation, and other enforcement services. National and state fair housing laws cover a variety of different contexts, including lost housing opportunities, which include, a refusal to rent, lease, buy, or view a property, evictions, denials from a shelter, as well as other contexts, including harassment. That could include, tenant-on-tenant harassment, landlord-on-tenant harassment, and much more. Home appraisals, housing advertisements, access to facilities or use of amenities and services, and of course, retaliation after a person asserts their fair housing rights. In Massachusetts, the categories we call sort of protected classes upon which you cannot be discriminated against include race, color, religion, national origin, ancestry, sex, disability, familial status, which includes the presence of minor children, or pregnancy status, marital status, age, veteran or military status, receipt of public assistance. This might include something like food stamps, use of a housing subsidy, for example, a Section 8 voucher, genetics, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Please understand that the protection for sexual orientation and gender identity refers to both your actual sexual orientation and gender identity and that which others perceive you to be. So in addition to a lot of the work we do around discrimination, we do work on reasonable accommodations and modifications to make a living space more accessible and provide equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. So just in recognition of the sort of dimensions and intersections, I just want to take a moment to recognize that. Please understand that disability in fair housing jurisprudence, that means sort of the laws that protect us all, is defined as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So it isn't limited to for example, Social Security disability insurance benefits. The example I like to tell people is that, you know, it can include something as commonplace as asthma. You know, in addition, South Coast Fair Housing acknowledges that people who identify as trans, non-binary, or gender non-conforming may face significant challenges in securing safe and affordable housing. Housing programs, including shelters that receive federal funds, must be made available to people irrespective of their actual or perceived sexual orientation and gender identity. As to placement, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has ruled that shelter placement should correspond to the gender with which a person identifies, taking health and safety concerns into consideration, of course. And the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has also stated that there is, quote, no legitimate reason for a provider to request documentation of a person's sex to determine appropriate shelter placement. In addition, generally, a shelter cannot deny access to a single-sex emergency shelter because identity documents indicate a sex that's different from one's gender identity. And a shelter cannot find someone ineligible for emergency shelter because their appearance or their behavior doesn't conform to gender stereotypes. I say all this, and I hope that if you've experienced any of these things, or if you come across any of these things, or if you're just not sure where you stand in the context of your housing, that you please reach out. Even if you're not sure if you're being discriminated against, please reach out to us. We'll conduct an investigation, we'll discuss your options, advise you of your legal and non-legal rights. And then also, I just wanted to make mention that in Massachusetts, it's also illegal to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, both actual and perceived, in the context of employment. So this might mean trying to secure a new position, or otherwise just, you know, sort of in your everyday job. And if you do experience employment discrimination, though our organization does not focus on that, you can file a complaint directly with the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination. They have offices in Boston, and you can also just find them online. Our organization is based in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and also just over here on Union Street in New Bedford. You know, as we're working home from the coronavirus pandemic, you can also sort of reach out to us, and we can meet up with you if that if you prefer that that method. And just so you know, our service area includes all of Rhode Island. So this is the people that we serve, all of Rhode Island, as well as Bristol and Plymouth counties in Massachusetts. I've said a lot. You can reach us via phone, 774-473-9994. You can also just take a look at our website, southcoastfairhousing.org. And if you prefer to sort of fill out a web online intake form, if you're for that initial contact, you can go ahead and do that as well. You can also just send us an email at info@southcoastfairhousing.org. So our organization aims to engage in holistic lawyering to empower the people that we serve. So on behalf of South Coast Fair Housing, I want to echo Tracy, who perhaps said it best. We see you, we hear you, and we are here for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kayla. That's a lot of great information. Next, we have Caddy Nath Folsom, who's a staff attorney at South Coastal County's Legal Services. Caddy.
Thank you. As Alex said, my name is Caddy Nath Folsom. I'm an attorney with the Justice Center of Southeast Massachusetts, which is a subsidiary of South Coastal County's Legal Services. I just want to thank South Coast LGBTQ+ for inviting us to be here with you today, and for all of you for having me on this chilly but beautiful afternoon. I haven't prepared remarks, and I'll be brief, but I'm here to introduce my organization and specifically the CLAVIC program. The CLAVIC program stands for Civil Legal Aid of Victims of Crime. It's a statewide legal aid program that provides legal services free of charge to anyone who's been a victim of a crime regardless of ability to pay or income level. So generally legal services are limited to those who qualify as under income, but the CLAVIC services are not limited by income. So folks who are over income can access our services. Lawyers funded by the CLAVIC program provide assistance to anyone who's been a victim of a crime, who has a civil legal problem that is a result of that crime, and who has a case or who lives in Massachusetts. Notably, you do not have to have reported the crime to the police, and the crime itself does not have to have taken place in Massachusetts or even in the United States. The types of legal issues that we can help with include housing, public benefits, family law, immigration, consumer law, health law, disability law, education, employment issues, elder law, veterans' rights, and others. At South Coastal Legal Services, we serve folks living in Barnstable, Bristol, Dukes, Nantucket, and Plymouth counties and the towns of Avon and Stoughton. Although the CLAVIC program has attorneys all over the state, so regardless of where you live, there is likely a CLAVIC attorney who serves your community. And finally, I'm just here as a representative of my organization to let you know, and I'm an immigration lawyer, and we work with folks who are undocumented, and I wish that it wasn't necessary to say this to anyone, but it often is necessary to say that we are a safe space, that we honor and respect the members of this community. We see you, we are you, we have many people on staff who are members of the community, and we will fight to ensure that the judicial system sees you and respects you for who you are as well. If you would think that you need legal help and you want to contact our organization for services, you can call 774-488-5958 between the hours of 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or you can go online to our website. We're working on updating it. It's www.sccls.org. Thank you so much again for having me here today.
Thank you, Caddy. And for anybody here in person, I believe she's got cards about, to hand out too. I also have business cards, so it's a one-stop shop for all your legal needs. Up next, only for Tracy gets a special attention. So up next, we've got Brian Costa, who's a fellow South Coast LGBTQ+ network board member, and also a nurse practitioner at Greater New Bedford Community Health Center. Brian?
Thank you guys all so much for being here. It's, like someone said, it's quite somber. Last year we were here and there were 35 plus other faces that were murdered. And here we are now with 45, 46. So as Alex had stated, I'm from the Greater New Bedford Community Health Center. I'm also a treasurer of the LGBTQ+ network. What had transpired was, after the political unrest, and recently with our current political person who was in power previously, and the multiple changes he was making kind of drove me into action. And I realized that down here on the South Coast, there was not many medical providers providing gender affirming care. So I decided to go to Fenway and learn. That's my duty, right? And that should be the duty of all of us. If we don't understand something, we should learn. So I decided to bring gender affirming care down to the South Coast, and I was applauded by not only my staff members, but my CEO. So I think that it's very comforting in knowing that I'm working for an establishment that is so supportive. So I did write a couple of things in terms of medicine. So compared to the general population, evidence and studies revealed that transgender individuals suffer from more chronic health conditions and experience higher rates of health complications related to HIV/AIDS, substance use, mental illness, as well as sexual and physical violence. The Center for American Progress National Representative Survey of LGBTQ+ network LGBTQ plus adults, which was conducted in June of 2020. So this is the most recent information that we have, noted a range of disparities pertaining to the health challenges that transgender adults experience, which include disparate health outcomes, discrimination in healthcare, inadequate inadequate provision of care, and barriers with respect to cost and insurance. The transgender community is more likely to experience higher rates of discrimination and mistreatment when interacting with healthcare systems and providers, thus leading to avoidance type behaviors and poorer health outcomes. Nearly half of the respondents to this survey reported postponing or avoiding getting preventative screenings due to discrimination. Nearly 1 in 2 transgender respondents reported experiencing some form of discrimination or mistreatment at the hands of a healthcare provider, including care refusal, misgendering, as well as verbal or physical abuse. And these are by the people who swore an oath to protect. 1 in 3 transgender respondents reported having to teach their doctor about transgender people in order to receive appropriate care. That should not be your job. Cost barriers present a significant obstacle to accessing care for transgender adults. Transgender adults experience greater financial insecurities and economic hardships, such as higher rates of poverty and unemployment, workforce discrimination, and housing instability. 40% of these transpondents reported postponing or avoiding necessary medical care as well as preventative screenings in the past due to cost. 46 reported having a health insurer deny them gender-affirming care or only pay for partial treatment. We're only going to pay for a little bit of your insulin. Your diabetes will handle itself out. Is that not what we're hearing? 34% reported that a health insurance company actually refused to change their records to reflect their current name or gender. So where are we? Well, Tony Cabral's here today. Shane Burgo's here today. These are our elected officials. And I say this because in order for health to improve these health disparities and reduce barriers to care for transgender patients, federal, state, and local governments must adopt both robust non-discrimination laws, targeted funding, and in-practice policies that are affirming, inclusive, and culturally competent throughout the U.S. healthcare system. Policymakers should also pursue significant investments to programs that provide direct health and support services to the transgender communities with which they serve. Adopting these policies will be critical for improving the health outcomes and daily lives of the estimated 1.4 million adults who identify as trans in the United States. And what I'm going to leave with this is looking at all of these faces on these steps, on these placards. These were daughters, sons, brothers, uncles, aunts, members of our community. And what's a shame is that we're in the freest country in the world, yet these individuals didn't get to live their lives freely. And so I hope that this is the start to a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So now we're going to take the time to honor those we have lost this year to tragic acts of violence. So myself and Alana Sachs, LICSW, will be reading the names and a little bit about each person so you can get to know them.
Tiana Alexander, who is also known as Davarea Alexander, was a 28-year-old Black trans woman. Tiana was shot to death in Chicago on January 6th. On social media, friends of Tiana posted that she had good energy and a beautiful light. And one friend said, "I loved everything about her." Samuel Edmund Damian Valentin, a transgender man, was killed on January 9th in Trujillo Alto, Puerto Rico. Samuel was looking forward to starting a new year. On January 1st, he posted on his Facebook, "A new year to come, grateful for all the experiences who taught me how strong we really are, to life, to good and bad, and for all justice that is forth to come." Bianca Muffin Banks, a Black transgender woman, shot to death in Atlanta, Georgia, on January 17th. On Friday, January 29th, Bianca's friends and the Trans Housing Coalition held a vigil outside of her apartment to remember her, saying Muffin was just blossoming into herself. Dominique Jackson, a Black transgender woman, was shot to death in Jackson, Mississippi on January 25th. According to her Facebook, Dominique was the mother of the House of Red and the founder of the Lottie Red Inc. Friends are remembering her on social media, with one saying, "My heart is heavy," and another, "I'm at loss for words." 50 Bands, a 21-year-old Black transgender woman, was shot to death in Baton Rouge, Louisiana on January 28th. Friends of 50 Bands and advocates said her name as they released balloons to remember her life. Alexis Braxton was also known as Kimmy Icon Braxton, a 45-year-old Black trans woman killed on February 4th in Miami. Braxton was a hairstylist and active on social media, posting regularly. One of her most recent posts said, "They can't stop my shine." China Carrillo, who also went by China Cardenas, was killed in the morning hours of February 18th, 2021 in New Wilmington, Pennsylvania. Not much is known at the time about her personal life, but one of her social media posts suggested she would have celebrated her 25th birthday just weeks before her death. Siblings, Jeffrey J.J. Bright, a 16-year-old trans boy, and Jasmine Kennedy, a 22-year-old non-binary person, both from Ambridge, Pennsylvania, were killed on February 22nd. Jeffrey was a student at Ambridge High School, while Jasmine worked at FedEx. Both siblings were active in PRISM, a nonprofit organization for the LGBTQ+ youth of Beaver County, PA. JJ is part of our PRISM family. JJ was a beautiful person with the biggest and brightest smile, and PRISM describes Jasmine as a sweet, shy, and artistic soul who loved to dance. Jenna Franks, a 34-year-old white transgender woman, was killed in Jacksonville, North Carolina in February. Jenna was part of the Onslow County LGBTQ+ Community Center family. She was remembered on Facebook by friends and family as sweet and a rock star.
Diamond Kyrie Sanders, a 23-year-old Black transgender woman, was shot to death in Cincinnati, Ohio on March 3rd. Diamond was described by a family member on social media as beloved. As a child, she would say, "I love my whole family." In her adult life, Diamond was a traveler, known to be in New York City one weekend and New Orleans the following week. Rihanna Pardo, a 26-year-old Latina trans woman, was killed on March 17th in Los Angeles. A former colleague of Rihanna's from Starbucks shared that as coworkers, they had an amazing time together. The Trans Latina Coalition and Rihanna's friends and family held a candlelight vigil on her memory, in her memory on March 20th. Jada Pearson, a 29-year-old Black trans woman, was killed on April 4th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Jada's family and friends have been remembering her on social media, with her sister sharing, "You're going to be truly missed, and once again, we always love you." Local advocates in Charlotte held a vigil on April 9th to remember her. Dominique Luscious, a 26-year-old Black transgender woman, was shot and killed on April 8th in Springfield, Missouri. On social media, many of Dominique's friends expressed their love for her and how much she will be missed. One friend shared, "Many don't get to live in their authentic truth. You were fierce, glam, and honey gorgeous. I love you now, tomorrow, and forever." Remy Fennell, a Black transgender woman in her 20s, was shot to death on April 15th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Remy's aunt said she was a vibrant young transgender woman who was just trying to make it and was doing it. She started her own business, graduated from cosmetology school. She has left her mark on the hair industry. Tiara Banks, a 24-year-old Black trans woman, was killed in Chicago, Illinois on April 21st, 2021. According to a news report, Tiara was sitting alone in her Ford Fusion when the shooter approached the vehicle and shot Tiara multiple times. She was pronounced dead at the scene. At just 24 years old, she had her whole entire life ahead of her. Natalia Smut, a 24-year-old Black and Puerto Rican transgender woman, was killed on April 23rd in California. Natalia was a celebrated drag artist in the San Jose LGBTQ community, with local community members describing her as a motivating and creative spirit with captivating performances and a love for advocacy within the community. Friends and community members organized a vigil for Natalia with more than 100 people attending. Iris Santos, a 22-year-old Latinx transgender woman, was killed in Houston, Texas on April 23rd, 2021. Iris was sitting at a picnic table enjoying a meal when an unidentified suspect approached and shot her. Tiffany Thomas, a 38-year-old Black trans woman, was killed on April 24th in Dallas, Texas. Tiffany is remembered as someone who had a big heart, who was funny and stayed laughing, and who was stylish. Carrie Washington, a 49-year-old Black trans woman, was killed on May 1st in Clearwater, Florida. Our community is yet again in mourning as a result of senseless acts of violence against trans and gender nonconforming people, said Tori Cooper. Carrie was at least a fourth trans woman killed in the last 10 days, each of them Black or brown. Our own Jahaira Dialto, a 42-year-old trans woman, was killed on May 2nd in Boston. She's a well-known and beloved transgender advocate for survivors of domestic and sexual violence, and a member of the ballroom community. Jahaira was a member of the House of Balenciaga and was a founder of Berkshire Transgender Day of Remembrance and the Berkshire Pride Festival. She shared on Twitter, "I am the mother who raised the children whose rainbow sparkled too brightly and blinded their birth moms. I know what gratitude in the eyes of a young person who finally feels seen looks like, and for me, that's enough."
Whispering Wind Bear Spirit, a 41-year-old Indigenous non-binary person, was shot in York, Pennsylvania on May 3rd and died early on May 4th. They often shared photos of meaningful quotes. Friends and family are remembering them, with one sharing, "You are missed," and another remembering Whispering Wind as a beautiful and kind soul. Sophie Vasquez, a 36-year-old Latina trans woman, was shot and killed in Georgia on May 4th. Sophie was a part of the Estrella community, or Community Estrella, a community that works to support trans people in the Atlanta area. She is remembered as the kindest person on the planet and as someone who was truly beautiful inside and out. Danica Danny Henson, who also went by Prince Daniel and Nia Dadon on Facebook, a 31-year-old Black trans woman, was shot and killed in Baltimore, Maryland on May 4th. According to family, Henson had just begun transitioning. One family member shared that Henson always had a big heart. There was love behind everything. Serenity Hollis, a 24-year-old Black trans woman, was shot and killed in Albany, Georgia on May 8th. Her mother said that the person that's responsible has no idea what they took from us. Oliver Ollie Taylor, a 17-year-old white trans boy, died on May 19th after being kidnapped and shot on May 12th in Gervais, Oregon. He was a student at Gervais High School, where he was involved in the Future Farmers of America organization. Oliver is remembered as an amazing child with a quirky sense of humor who impacted so many people. Thomas Harden, a 35-year-old Black trans woman, was killed on May 2nd in York, South Carolina. Friends have shared that Harden identified as a woman and continued to use the name Thomas and use both he and she pronouns. Harden is remembered as someone who always kept you laughing. Poe Black, who also went by Oliver Jackson and Legion, was a 21-year-old trans man who was killed in Nyland, California, in an area called Slab City. His body was found on May 11th. Poe was originally from Nashville, Tennessee, and often posted about disability rights and Black Lives Matter. He was also an artist. E.J. Boykin, who also went by Nova Watson, was killed in Lynchburg, Virginia on June 14th. He had just celebrated his 23rd birthday. He was loved and liked by everyone and was one of those people that just had good vibes and good energy. Adalyn Evans, a 24-year-old Black trans woman, was found dead in March in Port Arthur, Texas. Adalyn was originally from Beaumont, Texas, and had recently spent time in Port Arthur. Her grandmother said, "Nobody, no parent should have to go through this." Taya Ashton, a 20-year-old Black trans woman, was killed in Prince George's County, Maryland on July 17th. Taya was just at the beginning of her life, a life that she deserved to live to its fullest. Shai Vanderpump, a 23-year-old Black trans woman, was killed in Trenton, New Jersey on July 30th. According to Garden State Equality, Shai was a fierce LGBTQ advocate and is remembered for being known for her style and love of family, and someone who had a heart of gold, who loved to dress, smile, and see everyone happy and smiling.
Tierra Marie Lewis, a 36-year-old Black trans woman, was killed in Cleveland, Ohio on June 12th. Due to misgendering and misnaming from local officials and a lack of media coverage, her death was not reported until recently. According to reporting from the Buckeye Flame, Tierra Marie moved to Cleveland last year for a fresh start. One friend remembered her as a spirited girl. One day she would have purple hair, one day pink hair, and always an outfit to go with those colors. Miss Coco, a 44-year-old trans woman of color, was killed in Dallas, Texas on August 7, 2021. According to the new trans movement, she was a well-known small girl with a big, bubbly personality. Coco was a happy person and proud to be living her truth. Pooh Johnson, a 25-year-old Black trans woman, was killed in Shreveport, Louisiana on August 23, 2021. She was an accomplished makeup artist under the name Titanizer. Desaya Monet, a 32-year-old Black trans woman, was fatally shot in Chicago, Illinois on September 6th. The epidemic of violence plaguing the trans community, particularly Black trans women, is appalling, said Tori Cooper. Breonna Hamilton was a 25-year-old Black trans woman who was fatally shot in Chicago, Illinois. On social media, Hamilton's mother described her as an amazing person who touched so many people's hearts with her presence, and her memory will live on forever. Kier Lepre Cartier, a 21-year-old Black trans woman, was fatally shot in Arlington, Texas on September 30th, 2021. Cartier was from Dallas, Texas, and graduated from Skyline High School. Her friends remembered her on social media as a very strong, independent person who always had my back through thick and thin. Mel Groves, a 25-year-old Black trans man, was fatally shot on October 11, 2021 in Jackson, Mississippi. Groves was a plant soil scientist at Alcorn State University who loved agriculture and animals. He was also a member of the Knights and Orchids Society, a Southern-centered grassroots startup founded and led by Black, queer, transgender, and gender non-conforming people supporting gender justice and LGBTQ visibility.
Royal Poetical Stars, a 26-year-old Black trans woman, was fatally shot in Miami Gardens, Florida on October 2nd. She was a graduate of Florida Career College Vocational School, and she was remembered as the life of the party. Zoella Zoe Rose Martinez, a 20-year-old Latina trans woman, was fatally shot in Maple Valley, Washington on August 31st, 2021. Her body was later found in Seattle. Initial reports did not recognize her as transgender until her family confirmed her identity this month. In a statement, Martinez's family shared that Zoe mastered makeup that accentuated her loving and caring personality. She had a beautiful spirit, she always had a smile, and had only kind words to say about others. She was a born leader, and her peers acknowledged her as such. Joe Acker, a white 26-year-old trans woman, was killed in Boise, Idaho on October 26, 2021. She had previously served in the U.S. Army. Her family said that she ran towards the suspect to stop him, likely saving many lives. Her family also told the media that she was a hero and the type of person that always wanted to help people. She will be greatly missed. Jessie Hart, a white 42-year-old trans woman, was killed in Banks, Oregon. Her body was found on October 17, 2021, and prior to her death, Hart and her teenage son Caleb had been struggling with housing insecurity, staying in hotel rooms through subsidized and nonprofit assistance. Ricky Otumuro, aka True Starlet, was a 39-year-old Latina trans woman who was fatally shot in Centralia, Washington on the night of October 30th. Otumuro was a popular and well-loved member of the Washington LGBTQ community. She performed under the drag name True Starlet and was a former Miss Gay, Lewis County. Friends remembered her as an incredible advocate for the queer and trans community for nearly 20 years. Markeisha Lawrence, a 28-year-old Black trans woman, was very humble, as one of her friends remembered her, and had a heart of gold. Lawrence's friend said that her favorite thing to do was cook because she felt it filled the belly and fed the heart. Lawrence was fatally shot in South Carolina on November 4th. Jenny De Leon, a 25-year-old Latina trans woman who was found dead in Tampa, Florida on November 2nd. De Leon attended PFLAG Tampa meetings and sought their help when she began transitioning. They wrote, Jenny was an enigmatic, bright soul with enough energy to fill any room. And Angel Naira, a 36-year-old Black trans woman who was found fatally shot at her home in Pennsylvania on November 11th. Naira was a graduate of Aliquippa High School and Beaver Falls Beauty Academy and worked full-time in home health care. Her brother wrote that she was a great person and loved everyone. She had a big heart and would do anything for her family and friends.
Thank you. Please join us in a moment of silence for those we have lost. I guess the microphone's moving down with me today. Before we close, I just want to make sure everybody remember that the first transgender murder in the United States happened in Massachusetts and North Adams. So it can be home, it can be further away, but we need to be present, we need to be here. Before we close, I want to thank the City of New Bedford for this wonderful setting, our amazing host, Alex, our volunteers, including local and state government, our local gay bar, The Place, for being part of our community for 39 years. You can find us there tomorrow for our monthly tea dance. I want to give a special shout out to our tech team, Mocha James Herrup, SethThomas, Wicked Wheezy Entertainment, the Communal Space, which is a People of Color Community Center located at 246 Union Street, just a few blocks from here. In closing, each and every name read and recognized on this day represents a full, rich life that did not deserve to be cut short. We must bring this epidemic of violence to an end and fight for change. Thank you all for joining us today, and take care.